Hiya Swampies, and welcome to the Toad Probes once again. Of course, Dan Illick, the Hungry Beast, joins us, and also completing the third prong of the fork on today's probe is Associate Professor Dale Dominey-Howes, who's co-director of the Australian Tsunami Research Centre here at the University of New South Wales. Great to have you on board, Dale.
Thanks very much.
And let's begin with your props. You've brought in two fantastic props. Take us through the earthenware pots.
I have. Well, my props, I've got a volcano kids laboratory set for constructing and seeing how volcanoes work. And I've got a little earthenware pot that comes from the late Bronze Age, from the East Mediterranean, from Greece in fact. And they're my props because I was lucky enough to do my PhD in Greece in the 90s, reconstructing ancient disasters from digging up archaeological sites all through the East Mediterranean and looking at how volcanic eruptions and the tsunamis they generated may have destroyed these ancient civilizations.
Now Crete, the ancient civilization of Crete, was wiped out supposedly by a volcano.
That's right.
Is that do you subscribe to that theory? I know it's controversial.
It is a bit controversial, and you're right to point that out. But yes, all of the geology, all of the archaeology points to the collapse of what we refer to as the Minoan civilization about 1600 BC. The Santorini volcano blew its top in one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in the last 10,000 years, generated enormous tsunamis. And then we see a collapse of this civilization across the East Mediterranean in the following few years.
For the kids watching, can they get a big enough kit to wipe out their school? I think that's probably
I think most kids would hope that that was the case. Maybe if you put some of these together, you'd get there.
Now, the little earthenware pot, do you mean that people were sitting around, let's say 2,500 years ago, if I've got roughly the right distance in time, they were sitting there storing their oil in the little pot, and all of a sudden, bang, off on the horizon, they heard a noise, they didn't know what would happen, but say 20 minutes later, they were drowned.
Pretty much that's what happened. The volcano exploded with very little warning, and of course all that time ago people wouldn't have understood how the natural world worked. They might have looked for religious explanations of what was going on.
They clearly understood to put their pots in a safe place, though.
And we were very lucky that that's the case. But yeah, pretty much all these people on the islands around Santorini would have looked up to the volcano, they would have seen ash rising up into the sky, perhaps 40, 50 kilometres, and would have looked mesmerised.
And gone, my flight's been cancelled now, probably.
Yeah, and think about all the inconvenience that causes to global travel. And then many minutes later, their worlds came to an end.
Now, you're a disaster management expert, and would have there been people who did your work around at that time?
Well, actually, it's a really good question, and the answer is yes. The way people in ancient civilizations constructed their buildings often demonstrated that they understood how some of the world worked. For example, they could build their buildings to withstand earthquakes by using certain types of design criteria. And we see that preserved in the archaeology of destruction sites. Disaster management needs to understand the expertise of lots of people coming together. So for example, we need earth scientists, geologists to tell us how the world works. How do rocks break during an earthquake? What's the chemistry of a volcano that makes it really explosive? But to do disaster management for people, they ask questions like, how often, how big, when will the next one be? What will be the effects on me, my family, my business, my community? What are you going to do about it? Well, to answer those questions, we need engineers and social scientists and historians and archaeologists, as well as earth scientists. So it's a big discipline.
How do you remain pragmatic when all hell is breaking loose?
Yes.
That sounds incredibly frustrating job.
That is a good question, and there are times when you're in the depth and the horrificness of a post-disaster situation, and at 3 o'clock in the morning when you drag yourself to bed after a 20-hour day, you think, why am I doing this? But at those moments when you make a difference and you're able to return the child to its parents that's been lost in debris and damage, there's a spark in someone's eyes and it makes it all the worthwhile. So it's a long-term process, but we look for short-term as well as long-term gains.
Now in Japan, they have enormous problems, don't they? I mean, with the recent tsunami there, because you could argue that obviously there's housing, there's families broken up, people died and so on. But then the knock-on of these things, like the power plants, the problems of Toyota, all these things, I mean, it will take generations
Channel
to
9
solve.
journalists coming in.
Stuck.
Doesn't help, does it? No, this is right.
What's your guess at how long it'll take for...
This is exactly right. We refer to something which we call the amplification of risk. So when the disaster happens, it doesn't just affect that one place. It ripples out through the landscape, but also through social and economic systems. In reality, it's going to take years, perhaps decades, for the infrastructure to be rebuilt, if indeed it is in some of these places, years for the economy to recover. There are economic effects, agricultural systems are polluted by nuclear fallout or saltwater intrusion into paddy fields. Years and years.
HG, it's already affecting my life.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
the
know.
iPhone 5 has been delayed by about a couple of months because of this.
How you're hoping
Outrageous.
you're on medication, obviously.
I'm just going to have to swap to Android eventually.
Can you please thank Dale Dominey-Howes for his insights into telecommunications in disaster zones on The Probe today.